Hello and welcome to The Print. I'm TCA Sharad Raghavan, and I'm going to be in conversation with perhaps India's foremost agriculture economist. He is Dr. Ashok Gulati. He is currently the the Infosys chair for agriculture at ICRIER. Prior to this, he has also been the chairman of the Commission for Agricultural Costs and Prices, and he's just an absolute expert on the agricultural sectors and farmer issues, and it's the perfect time to talk to him now. Thank you so much, Dr. Gulati, for joining us. I know you're very busy.
Thank you for having me. No problem.
So, Dr. Gulati, I'm going to start right off. I've read a lot of what you have written and heard your arguments about how MSPs, at the rates that the farmers are demanding it right now, would hurt not only the farmers but also government finances. And you've argued that a price stabilization fund aimed at helping the farmers would be a better way forward. But are there other policy measures taken by the government that are not working? Like, say, for example, the export bans. How are those hurting the farmers?
Okay, there are three parts of the game, I think. First, we must understand what is at the bottom of the demand for farmers.
Right?
The real thing is that their incomes have not been growing sufficiently fast, right? And everybody wants incomes to grow, whether it is you, me, or peasants. So we must appreciate their concern and have compassion for that. That's number one.
Absolutely.
What are the ways in which they are asking the income to go up? They are saying, give me higher price for my product, which will be 25 to 30% higher than the current minimum support price, right? And the government should give a legal guarantee that nobody would be allowed to buy the product below that price. So first you are increasing the MSP by 25-30%, and then you are saying nobody should be allowed to buy below that, whether private sector or government. Now,
Right.
that's not how the markets function, and that's not how the system can function. Because if the supply is more than the demand, then the price has to adjust to clear the markets. This is undergraduate, demand supply
Economics.
theory, economics.
Right.
So if the market doesn't clear, how many commodities the government will buy and at what cost, right? It can be very humongous cost, and we don't know how many commodities and whether it can be implemented operationally. How do you ensure that in Bihar somebody is not buying below MSP?
Right.
So it will be very iniquitous, because those who are strong players, they can go to the court, but a small holder will go to the court to ensure that he gets a MSP. So I think my feeling is this instrument through which they want to increase their incomes is not the right instrument. Okay.
Okay.
It will be almost impossible to operationalize it and implement it properly across three commodities across the country. And to me, this will create major distortions in the economy. And then the government, if they have to foot the bill, it can be, God knows how much it will be. I haven't calculated, but depending upon where the price is, if it is 20% below MSP, and all these commodities have to be bought by the government and then sell at what price. So it's a very complicated system.
Right, sir.
So I
And
would
yes, sir.
say that we have to find better solutions to the problem. Over to you.
Right. So, no, I understood your arguments about the MSP, but there are other things that the government is doing, such as the wheat export ban, the
Yes.
ban on non-basmati rice.
Yeah, sure. So the alternative is get the markets right. There are two ways to increase farmers' incomes. One, increase their productivity. That is on the
Right.
production side. That means give them the best seeds. That means more investment in agriculture, R&D, irrigation, farming practices, innovations in production path. So those are the production part. The other is give them access to the best markets, not only in India, but also in the world, right?
Right.
That is what the markets can offer for, like you and me, we would like to sell our services to the highest bidder, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's our right. I should be given the
Yes.
freedom to, sell anywhere that can bid. I'm happy and can give me a good price. So same thing, the farmers should be given. So I feel the government has, in a way, uh, you know, I need to put a caveat before I say this sentence. Policymakers are walking on a very tight rope. They have to balance the interests of the consumers as well as of the farmers.
Right.
Consumers want everything literally free, very low price, right?
Yes.
And urban consumers particularly are very vocal. So if the onion price goes to 80 rupees a kg, oh, they will be all against the government. But when onion price goes to 5 rupees a kg, then consumers are happy, but the farmers are crying and nobody is there to listen to them.
Of
So
course.
this is the problem that government has to deal with in calibration of how the markets can function efficiently and give a good price to the farmer. Now, what happened was, it's going to be an election year, everybody knows, and they started putting export bans starting with wheat last year. Then they started putting stocking limits. Then rice came in, onion came in, all these export bans, stocking limits on traders, and on top of that, unloading wheat and rice in the market at below the economic cost of FCI, literally bringing the market prices down to minimum support price. The whole
Right.
idea of minimum support price, it should be minimum, and if the market is giving them a higher price, farmers should be allowed to sell at the higher price, and government should buy at the market prices. This was the original idea of Prices Commission when it was founded in 1965. The
I
current
see.
policy has put it upside down. They have made the market prices pushed down to MSP. So farmers are losing on that account. We worked it out on case of wheat last year when the market price was brought down to MSP. Farmers lost almost 40,000 crores of rupees.
Yes, there was a paper that ICRIER had published in September last year.
Right, right. So I think we need to clean up this mess. Okay. So we will have to not only open up these markets and remove all these, stocking limits on traders, which is Essential Commodities Act of, 1955 based on 39. All those are things of when there used to be huge scarcity.
Right.
If you are short, better you import, rather than blocking. In fact, you should be exporting from one end and could be importing from the other. India is too large a country. So I would say, except using 5, 10%, 15% import duty here or there or export tax, most of it, 90% needs to be cleaned up. We are living in the past. Now that whole thing reflects that there is a pro-consumer bias. You want to appease the consumers more than the producers.
Farmers. Right.
Whereas producer is the one that is taking all the risk. Production risk, market risk, he's toiling hard. What are consumers doing? They are doing their own job. But so how to calibrate this pricing policy and the markets getting right? You have suspended most of the commodities from futures markets. That is one way to discover prices. But what are the other alternatives? You can help onboard farmer producer organizations on ONDC, Open Network for Digital Commerce.
Right.
You are going for 10,000 FPOs. You can help them to aggregate the produce, grade it, package it, and put it on the ONDC, so that they have an all India market. You have to get out of the localized market if you want better price. From the localized market to the state level market to the national market to the international market.
Right. So, sir, I was looking at the CACP data, and I found that the current MSP for wheat and a few of the other rabi crops is actually more than 50%. It's more than 50% higher than the C2 cost in some states like Madhya Pradesh and in Haryana.
Yes, I know. I know that, but paddy is 50%. Most of the other crops are at 50%. Their formula is minimum 50% higher. Because in case of wheat, if you give only 50% above A2FL, you will fall short of wheat. The demand
But
is more than
this was more than 50% more than the C2 in these states.
a few states. Overall weighted average, if you look at, I'll have to check on that. But broadly, it's only one crop.
Right.
You look
Yes.
at 23 crops, look at paddy, which is the biggest crop, and the maximum
Mhm.
procurement takes place there. So that's what I'm saying. The demand supply forces have to play a role in determining what the price has to be. It cannot be just your cost plus pricing.
Right.
If you follow the same formula for wheat and paddy, 50% plus, on A2FL, then
Hmm.
people will get out of wheat because the demand is more than what the supply would be at that price.
Right, I understand. And so the government has also argued that the MSP that they are providing right now, which is 50% over A2FL, is actually higher for a lot of crops than international prices. Uh,
Well, yeah, you can check in different prices and international prices. The question is, if you are an importer of that commodity, you need to look at the import parity price. That means whatever the international price is, add 40 to $60 per ton as an freight cost. If you are a
I
net
see.
exporter, then you have to compete. Your FOB price should be equal to their FOB price to compete. So
Right.
it's the import parity price in case of importables and export parity price in case of exportables that you need to do. A
I
proper
understand.
comparison has to be done in trade policy to work out. But overall, I would say 80% of our crops, 80% of our agriculture produce is exportable. That means their prices are lower than the world prices. The biggest problem is in our oilseed sector,
I see.
edible oil, because that's where we are giving huge protection to so-called self-sufficiency, which we can't achieve in edible oils. There's no way. And that's, the self-sufficiency argument in every commodity doesn't work.
I understand. And so now here's a quite a frank question. Now, these farmers that are protesting, and rather all the farmers, would they have benefited had the farm laws been passed?
Well, it was unfortunate that because one of the ways to do price discovery and minimize the price risk is contract farming. The
Right?
fastest growing sector in agriculture is the poultry sector, 8 to 9% per annum. And that is all, 80% of that is contract with the integrator, with the big
I
hatcheries.
see.
They provide the chicks and they have a buyback arrangement at a price. There is no
Right.
MSP there. Okay, so they cover the market risk, they also cover the mortality risk. So
Right.
risk is borne by the big players, not by the small players. So small players can start with 500 birds. Today, the same farmers have 25,000 birds. So
Hmm.
that's how the incomes go up. In 1 hectare of millet versus 1 hectare of poultry farm, the income difference can be 3 times.
I see.
That's how
So
you
all the
increase the
other
income.
farmers,
That's
so
how
the
you
other
increase the
farmers
income.
of other products might have benefited from this contract farming if the
Of
farm laws
course,
had been passed.
of course. Same thing in what is Amul doing today? There is no
Hmm.
MSP, but there is a sort of an understanding. You bring milk, even if you bring a half a liter of milk, I'll buy you at this price, and these are the parameters. This should be the fat content, and this should be SNF. What
I
is that?
see.
You can do it through cooperatives if you don't have a trust in the private sector. Although the biggest revolution in poultry is driven by two major players, Venkateshwara Hatcheries and Suguna. Okay,
Right.
they are big private sector players. Now in dairy, you started off with the cooperatives, but when in 2002-3, Prime Minister Vajpayee delicensed the dairy sector and opened up to the private sector following the same model of Amul is progressing at double the pace than cooperatives. They are doing a better job.
Right.
The farmer gets a market, assured market, so his price risk of the market is minimized.
Absolutely. And this is what the farm laws would have enabled for
That's
all the
right.
other crops.
That's right. So if you don't want to go for farm reforms, at least on the cooperatives, you can do it.
I see. I understand. And I also read there was an article written by you where you had recommended that the PM Kisan amount should be hiked to 10,000 rupees a year from the current 6,000 rupees. Now, as a fiscal hit to the exchequer, how would you compare this to raising the MSP?
Yeah. Raising an MSP is very distortionary in the market if it is not aligned to demand supply equation.
Right.
Okay, so it will throw a spanner in the working of the economy, and the inefficiency losses will far exceed the amount you are spending on this.
Right.
So therefore, the world over, country after country has come out of price support operations or minimized that and went in for income support. Because
I
income
understand.
support does not distort the markets, right? Marginally, if at all, but they are not directly interacting into the demand supply equation in the way price is interacting. So I had said that you announced last time 6,000 rupees. This was in
Yes.
2019. In nominal terms, it has remained flat. When you work out in real terms, today's 8,000 rupees will be equal to 6,000 rupees of 2019.
Right.
Okay, so 8,000 rupees if you want to keep the same level in real terms, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then I said you have put these export controls, and just on wheat, farmers have lost 40,000 crores.
Right. Yes.
You need to compensate them that. You were favoring the consumers, but then at the cost of the farmer, right? So
Right.
better you compensate them. And then I would go a step further. You need to rationalize the mega amounts that you are spending on food subsidy, on fertilizer subsidy, the PM Kisan insurance subsidy, Manrega. I think this entire gamut
Mm-hmm.
is about 5.5 lakh crores. And if you rationalize this, why can't Manrega be dovetailed with agriculture operations?
Right.
Okay, then that will lower the cost of production. You are spending 86,000 crores on Manrega.
Yes.
This revised estimate.
Yes, latest.
23-24 revised estimate, interim budget that is given is, it was budgeted 60,000 crores, you spent 86,000 crores. That's not a small
Correct.
sum.
Yes.
Okay. Food subsidy, 2,12,000 crores, revised estimate. Why 800 million people have to be given free food? Are they so poor they can't afford food? They can't earn their food? Then what are you talking that your poverty has come down to 11%? So
Right.
you give free food to 11% of population, I have no problem. But at least to the other, you charge at least half the price of MSP. This is Vajpayee did, in its own targeted public distribution system. You will save 50, 60,000 crores.
Absolutely.
Fertilizer subsidy. Why the urea is 90% subsidized? He is using too much urea, very less of P and K. It gives you greenery, it doesn't grain. give grain. And there is
Mm-hmm.
diversion. Plywood industry and all non-agriculture uses are taking away fertilizer. Even it is going to, Nepal and Bangladesh, all bordering country. It is the cheapest in the world.
Yes.
So why don't you rationalize that? The moment you rationalize that, you will save 30, 40,000 crores right there. This rationalization of subsidy regime in the central budget, which is 5.5 lakh crores, food subsidy, fertilizer subsidy, Manrega, crop insurance, and agriculture credit subsidy. These
Mm-hmm.
five subsidies, if you look and sit down and try to rationalize without giving up the objective function that you are trying to do, but just
Right.
rationalize it properly, you will easily 1 lakh crores. Easily. I can write
Wow.
it on the wall here. Sit down with me and 1 lakh crore, I will put it in your pocket. That 1 lakh crore can be used to create a price stabilization fund, to give a new deal of high value agriculture to Punjab farmers who are stuck in wheat and rice. Rice is an environmental disaster in Punjab. They need to come out of it. And the
Right.
center and the state need to come together to create that different production basket and a different package. And this money, not an extra money, this will come out of the rationalization of this 5.5 lakh crores of subsidies.
I understand. And now you mentioned fertilizers. I had a few questions regarding nano urea and nano DAP. Now, from what I had read up about it, and please do correct me if I'm wrong, but the nano urea needs to be sprayed on the leaves of the plants, which means that it can't be used at the time of putting the seeds in or in the second stage of fertilizer either. It can only be used in the third stage. So farmers aren't, and also the process seems to be a little inconvenient to use it. So farmers aren't really picking it up and most likely will not pick it up. Is this a correct assessment?
Well, education has to be there. Number one, uh, what is this new product? Even many of the agriculture scientists don't uh, fully approve and endorse this. This trial has not been done, that trial has. And then to the farmers, it is being thrust upon that you will not get this granular urea unless you buy this 2 bottles and so on and so forth.
Right.
If they feel it is a compulsion to us. This is not how anything can be imposed. You need to do a lot of extension work to demonstrate what the benefits of this are. And you
Hmm.
can replace. But if you say use this, but I am giving you free urea, literally 90% subsidized, they are not interested in looking at you. This is something like you are telling me, don't drink, but I'll give you a free bottle of whiskey. You know. So this is in urea 90% subsidy.
Right.
That's totally irrational. Last 15 years, there is hardly any change in price. Okay, so I think we have to very dispassionately sit down with the farmers with a compassion and look at that these are the subsidies that we need to rationalize and how we can save. And as an economist, I can easily see 1 lakh crore of saving, which can be used to give a new deal to the farmers. New deal for agriculture in the Amrit Kal. This should be Prime Minister Modi's new slogan. And he should start that from Harminder Sahib in Amritsar. He should go there, sit down. He has been visiting all the temples around the world. Let him go to Harminder Sahib in Amritsar and announce a new deal for Punjabi farmers and sit down with Punjab government as a 50-50. The entire area of, let's say, Amritsar should be announced as an export zone, high value crops and dairy products and fruits and vegetables to be airlifted to Gulf countries.
Fantastic. And but you feel that nano urea though has some potential to work, even though it can only be sprayed on the leaves and
I had a big brainstorming session with the people who came up with this Nano Urea guys. And they say they are multiplying production and even exporting and all that. But as you rightly said, when I went to Punjab and talked to farmers, they felt it is being thrust upon us and we have to buy this, so I'm not using it. So there's a lot of process of education and implementation of this, and some carrot, some little stick here and there would do that. If the technology is really good, then it should take off. But so
Absolutely.
far, it has not shown that. The problem in urea is when you are giving 90% subsidy on granular urea.
Mm-hmm.
Plant does not consume more than 35% of it. Rest is going in the environment as nitrous oxide, which is
Right.
273 times the carbon equivalents. Or it is going in groundwater and nitrate content goes up, it becomes non-potable. So it's environment disaster. Now look at this, we are giving 90% subsidy on granular urea, but the soluble urea, which can be used in the drip, where 90% nitrate use efficiency will go from 35% to 90%, that is not subsidized. So look at the anomalies in the policy. We are subsidizing
Absolutely.
granular to create poison in the environment, but we are not subsidizing the soluble fertilizers, which can give you 90% nitrogen
Absorption.
nutrient use efficiency and almost
Right.
abolish all the greenhouse gas emissions.
Absolutely. That does not make sense.
So that means a lot of policy work has to be done, and a team has to sit down and do rationalization of these policies in agri-food space.
Right. And similarly with Nano DAP, which they announced in the interim budget, now again from what I've read, DAP is used most at the time of putting in the seeds because it helps in root growth. So if you bring in a spray method, then again that will not be used at that point, and so the Nano DAP actually won't be picked up. Is the idea itself then dead before it even takes off?
This is actually the brainstorming that we had. The people from Nano DAP also came, the Coromandel people and all that. Those who are producing it are very confident that this will take off.
Okay.
But at the farmer end, when I don't get that confidence. And when I talk to scientists in between, uh, half of them say, oh no, there's nothing in this. Some say, yes, there is some potential. So if the business, you throw a new commodity into the business, there's a lot of awareness campaign that has to be done along with it, right?
Right.
But when you thrust upon the consumer, that is the farmer in this case,
Hmm.
then some feel, oh, this is only to benefit those factories that are producing it. It is being thrust upon
Right.
us. So that trust deficit develops. Otherwise, when every day companies, whether it is a car company or telephone company, they keep producing new products. And then what do you have? Full page ad, lot of campaigning, advertisement. And it is up to you and me whether we want to buy it or not.
Absolutely.
Right? But that's not happening in the case of Nano Urea or Nano DAP. It is being thrust upon the farmer. So they say,
Right.
why are you asking? The problem is you have subsidized the other commodities so much that nobody is looking at these things.
Absolutely. So you feel that in the July budget, whichever government comes to power, the July budget should rationalize all of these subsidies, rectify some of these imbalances?
Well, that would be a dream come true if the government, that whosoever comes, although high probability of the incumbent government to continue, but whosoever comes, I can write on the wall these 5 subsidies, 6 subsidies, rationalization. We can easily save 1 lakh crores. That is what my
Wow.
professional mind says, and I can do it, provided they have the political will to do it. It requires a political will
Absolutely.
and a political communication with the farmers, because our great opposition always will oppose anything you want to do, good or bad.
Right.
So the issue is you have to communicate. And the good thing is that nobody is a better communicator in the country today than the Prime Minister himself. So if
Absolutely.
he wants to do it, he wants to give a new deal for agriculture, for the Amrit Kal. This is, I'm giving you a title. And let the Prime Minister start it from Harminder Sahab in Amritsar, starting with the most prosperous peasants of the country. Once they adopt it, I think it will spread to the rest of the country. And that huge gap that has been created in the trust between the government and the agitating farmers today needs to be uh, narrowed down and bridged and abolished.
Right. Wonderful, Dr. Gulati. Hopefully, the government is watching this. But on that note, thank you so much. I've already taken a lot of your time. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me. I hope something comes out.